Ever struggle with where to put an apostrophe in a sentence? How about commas or semicolons? These may seem like minor details, but punctuation marks give clarity and meaning to your writing. In this course, you'll learn about some of the basic rules related to periods, commas, semicolons, and dashes. You'll also find out how to correctly use apostrophes, quotation marks, exclamation points, as well as parentheses and brackets. Does punctuation matter? Well, let's suppose you didn't use any punctuation in a message. It might not change the meaning of individual words, but it does alter the flow of ideas in the sentence, affecting its comprehension and readability. First, let's consider the period. A period is used at the end of many types of sentences, including declarative sentences and most imperative sentences. It's also used with indirect questions. In declarative sentences, you state an idea and give information to the reader. An imperative sentence gives orders or directions. And in an indirect sentence, you imply a question by paraphrasing what someone has asked. The period also has several other functions. For instance, it's used in abbreviations, in internet addresses, as well as after numbers in lists or outlines. One other use for periods is to indicate an ellipsis. This is the omission of a word, phrase, line, paragraph, or more from a quoted passage, and is typically formed using 3 periods. Next, consider when to use question marks. Question marks are always used after direct questions. An exception is when a request is politely disguised as a question. A question mark can sometimes be used to show surprise or skepticism. The statement, "He finished the report yesterday," may be turned into a question that indicates doubt. He finished the report yesterday? Another type of question are elliptical questions. These are incomplete questions that refer back to other questions or statements for their meaning. For example, the first question may be a direct question, and the second an elliptical question that refers back to it. When will the project be done? In 2 weeks or 3? How about questions within a sentence? While question marks are usually used at the end of sentences, they can also be used within a sentence. For example, the question may end with a question mark, but the sentence as a whole ends with a period. And with questions in a series, each question should be followed by a question mark. Ever wonder where you put the question mark when using quotes? Well, it depends on whether the whole sentence is a question or only the part in quotes. The rule is you place a question mark inside quotes only when it's part of the quoted matter. But the question mark follows quotes when the entire sentence is a question. Question marks can be used within parentheses to indicate doubt about the correctness of a number, date, or other fact. This can also be used to express sarcasm or irony, but this is generally discouraged in business writing. And finally, exclamation points. Exclamation points are typically used after interjections or exclamations to show emphasis or strong feelings. And they can be used for a rhetorical question that's essentially an exclamation. These punctuation rules give your writing order. Use them to help readers move fluidly from one idea to the next to reach your intended conclusion. Commas. Correct usage is complicated, and the rules around them can be confusing. But because they're used more than any other punctuation mark and can change the meaning of a sentence, it's important you learn how to use them correctly. For instance, consider this sentence. Did the cat eat, Lila? Now, let's see what happens when you remove the comma. Did the cat eat Lila? Now that's a completely different story. That's because commas modify how ideas in a sentence flow. They indicate pauses or changes in mental direction. Ultimately, your aim in using commas correctly is to make your writing easier to read and understand. So let's look at the different uses of commas. First, they separate the main elements of a sentence. Most introductory clauses are separated from main clauses by commas. So in the sentence, "To begin with, I want to express my thanks," a comma follows the phrase "to begin with." Then there are transitional expressions, such as currently. These are used at the start of a sentence and are also followed by commas. And expressions such as unfortunately and in other words, which provide comments, explanations, or other supplementary information, are followed by commas as well. A comma is also used to separate main clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction. So in this sentence, the two main clauses are separated by the conjunction but. A second main use of commas is to set off non-essential elements. These elements don't affect the meaning of the sentence. So in the sentence shown, the phrase, "who is an excellent editor," is set off by commas. But if you took out the commas, it wouldn't change its meaning. Restrictive or essential elements, on the other hand, are not set off with commas. They limit the word they refer to and cannot be omitted without leaving the meaning too general. Another common use of the comma is to separate elements in a series. The basic rule is that you use a comma to separate each word or phrase listed. In this example, commas follow each name, including the name that comes before the conjunction and. If the last item in a series is a pair joined by and, the pair should still be preceded by a comma. You also use commas to separate two or more adjectives that equally describe or modify the same word. But if the noun and the adjective immediately before it are considered a unit, no comma should be used. Now let's consider some basic rules of when not to use commas. First, don't separate a subject and its verb with a comma. Avoid separating a verb and its object or complement. Never separate pairs joined by a coordinating conjunction. And don't use a comma after a conjunction. These are some key uses and rules of commas. Following them will help ensure the clarity and readability of your writing.